Okay, Internet, we need to talk about bourbon. So, I regularly get the question here on my little channel as to why I don't review more bourbons. And I mean, the major answer is because I focus this channel on trying to give exposure to stuff that just doesn't get a lot of, exposure. Um, and at the moment in American spirits, at least, nothing is really getting more exposure than bourbon. So if you want to find out the latest on whatever hot limited release is coming out, there's just do a search in the YouTube bar, and you'll find a dozen reviews of the stuff. Right? I mean, I don't like that's already taken care of. However, I did think it would be useful to do a couple of bourbon reviews in the context of a one-off video just on like what is the deal with bourbon right now? Where is it? Um, uh, and so that's the plan. So I've lined up. I was originally just going to do these two, right? So I've got on the one hand, uh, Evan Williams, Bottle and Bonds from Heaven Hill. This is a long-standing. It sort of represents in a way the value bourbon category, along with Wild Turkey 101, Old Grandad 114, a couple of other things like that. This is kind of oh, that's my phone. Sorry. Uh, you know, you walk into a liquor store with 20 bucks, you come out with this, you've done well. This remains, very reasonably priced and of high quality. Um, so, usually 15 to 20 bucks in most areas. And I wanted to compare that, again, with the other end of the scale, sort of stylistically and price wise, with this single barrel offering from J. Henry. J. Henry being sort of one of the leading, let's say, craft distillers in the U.S. right now, sort of acting as part of the vanguard. More on them in a minute, and more on this particular bottling in a minute. But I mean, the elephant in the room here is this little guy sitting on the table. This is a sample I took after a tasting I ran about 10 years ago. It was one of the first tastings I ever did. I used to do tastings sort of in our place all the time, in the pre-COVID days. And it was a bourbon tasting, and so the lineup was, this will amuse you, Elijah Craig, 18-year-old, uh, Van Winkle 10, Wild Turkey Rare Breed, Booker's, and this George C. Stagg 2010, edition. So which is what, around 15 years old, something like that. And I did that on a budget, incidentally, of less than 300 bucks, which tells you something about where the market has gone. And my favorite was actually the rare breed, the wild turkey. And that is also, incidentally, also the one, you could also maybe count the Bookers in this, but definitely the rare breed is the one which hasn't really budged in either price or quality. Hint, hint. Actually, it occurred to me, I always used to think I was a Heaven Hill fanboy. But in the last week or so, it has occurred, going through old tasting notes, it has occurred to me that if I had to be like ride or die on any of the big Kentucky producers, it would probably be Wild Turkey. But that's another discussion. So this is, a bit of a legend, right? And I thought, in the context of talking about what's the deal with bourbon, this would be a good one to dig up and try again because, I made a little sample of it after we'd finished off the rest of the bottle. So I'm just going to pour these and I'll talk more about, the deal with bourbon more generally after I do sort of our round of reviews. But so let's start with that round of reviews. And here's the Henry. Okay. Okay. So let's start off just with tasting notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try these neat, add a couple squirts of water, bring them down to proof, and try them again, give them a score, and then we'll talk about the market. Okay, Evan Williams bottled in bond, 50% alcohol. This is there's a lot number. I'll put it down below. I don't, whatever. Probably bottled in 2020 though, recently. I mean, the main note I get right off the bat is like autumn leaves. This is like, you're 12 years old. Your dad's been raking leaves all day, into these nice piles, and then you're a little bit of a jerk, so you hop into the piles and bury your head in leaves. That's kind of what this smells like. Um, but then like mix the leaves up with like some ginger snaps, well, maybe some like candy ginger too, but more like cookies, like ginger snaps. Yeah, leaves and confectionery. That's kind of it's very wood driven, but those are the specific kinds of flavors that this lands on. Um, just lots of wood smoke. It's very smoky, but don't think peat here. Think like, you lit some hardwood smoke on fire and for your smoker. That kind of smoke. There's also like a cinnamon bun thing going on, like you're raking leaves, but then someone brought a cinnabon for you, and you're like, oh, delicious. Um, there's a little like wintergreen thing too. Um, some dillweed. I mean, it's very simple. There's not a lot going on here, but it's wonderfully balanced between, and it's not. Um, it doesn't feel. How do I put this? It doesn't feel cheap. This feels like a very complete spirit that just happens to be, very simple, dry. I like the dryness, and wonderfully balanced between the sort of confected notes, the ginger snappy thing, um, and the wood, like the sort of just wood smoke, leafy thing on the palate. Damn it. Um, okay, so this is where, you know, I always get surprised when I go back and try Heaven Hill, and to some extent, a lot of of the big producer bourbons, but especially Heaven Hill, at how like thin it is. Um, I don't know. I don't know if this is chill filtered. It's bonded, right? So I don't know. Can you do like more than standard barrier filtration in when it's a bonded product? I don't know, but it feels weirdly thin, like it's just had all the oil stripped out of it. It comes across as a little young, um, like it's all at the front of my mouth. That's usually my clue. If it's sort of all right up here, as opposed to sort of going back beyond my molars, that's young. God, it is nice though. Ginger snaps again, kind of a wood soury thing like going on, like you just chopped down a tree and you just grab some of the wood from the inside and chewed on a little bit. A little bit of like a toasted corn effect, kind of a almost an absinthe note, kind of hanging around in the background, like you threw a little drop of absinthe in there, like you were gonna make a Sazerac or something. Wood smoke again, leaves again, kind of following. It's very consistent from the nose to to the palate. You know, uh, very front heavy, kind of kind of smoky, lightly sweet, very just pleasant. But at the same time, kind of simple. Um, Again, you come out of a liquor store with this and you've done well. But at the same time, like I mean, um, this is not, especially the thinness is holding this back from getting into sort of moving out from suck and into good, if I can use that scale that I always talk about. Maybe I'll link the scale up below. All right, so I'm gonna give this a squirt of water or two, and we will move on to the Stag. that probably sounds kind of funny. Like this is a legendary spirit, right? Like just having it in the middle rather than at the end just feels like heresy somehow, which is great. I like heresy. Um, all right, moving on to the Stagg. So this is the 2010 edition um, from the BTAC, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Um, at the time, I think this was between 60 and $70. I was able to buy it off the shelf. Um, and it is 71.5% alcohol. And I believe back in the day, this used to be 15 years old or so. Um, so let's just, so it's mash bill one from Buffalo Trace. So this will be very corn heavy. All right, what do we got? All right, so massively, hilariously oaky. It's just, it is oak piled on oak piled on oak. It is oak folded in on itself in like a four-dimensional space. Um, to the point that it actually becomes fruity, so that the leading note is actually kind of a like a cherry thing. Um, yeah, cherries, like both dried cherries and fresh cherries. Red currant, a kind of I don't get that much outside of wine, but here it is in a bourbon. Kind of a like a blueberry syrup thing, like an IHOP blueberry syrup. But behind that in the background, you know, but not even the background, like it's integrated with it, is this kind of even more obnoxious kind of wood smoke campfire thing that just goes on forever. It's sort of like a cartoon exaggeration of what was going on here. Um, Lots of alcohol. I mean, this is very alcohol heavy, and you can just smell it. Um, it's very, nippy. There's some Southern sweet tea coming in. Southern sweet tea is a thing that I can't get anymore because I'm in the north and no one here understands. Like you can't just add sugar to like tea that's already made. You have to, it's hard to explain. There's also some mint tea, some Senegalese mint tea coming through. It really just smells like I walked into a cooperage. It smells just oak and more oak and oak. The rye and the corn are just they're just totally lost here. It's just we're just gonna Philip Glass this one. We're just gonna hammer the same notes over and over again. Um, Cinnamon, nutmeg, fresh cherry pie. But if you like, I don't, I don't know if oak trees can make syrup in the same way that maple trees can make syrup. But if there's a such thing as oak syrup, this is it. It's like pour oak syrup on top of your cherry pie, and that's exactly what this is. On the palate, okay, here we go. Oof. Okay, big, nippy. The alcohol is very live on this. Big, hot, overblown. Quite simple though. Um, Very simple actually. Uh, Autumn leaves again. Like this again. This is like a cartoon version of what was going on here. Um, Autumn leaves, wood smoke, wood tannins everywhere. That oak syrup thing, to the extent that that exists, and it's quite sweet, but also, you know, um, but the smokiness really also is its sweetness cut through with wood smoke. And beyond that, it's a little bit vague. The cherry note again, this sort of dried cherry, little nutshell. Um, Maybe a little bit of fennel. I guess that's the rye kicking in. Just hints of fennel. Kind of a nice. The finish is nice though. It's so this is filling in my mouth in a way that this wasn't, which tells me it's older. And the finish is actually there's a cooling effect, like a mentholy kind of cooly thing going on. The finish is actually the best part of this. It reminds me that this is not just spectacle, that this is actually a quality product. Um, but it's not. I mean, it's just not. It's not just the cooling thing. It's also like the oak syrup, the wood tannins, the smoke. Yeah, this is a piece of a spectacle, first of all, and that's great. I mean, think of um, oh Jesus, think of like Lamborghini Countach or something. This is sort of the bourbon version of that. It's there's a lot of show going on, and maybe it's fun to drive a little bit too, but that's not the point. Like this is really about pure spectacle. In a way, I mean, it's weird that stuff like this has come to represent sort of the more old school side of bourbon now, because this tastes very modern to my palate. This is very very wood driven, for example. So now I'm going to do something which I recommend you do not do yourself. I'm going to repeat that. Do not do what I'm about to do. I'm going to add water to this, proof it down to somewhere between 40 and 45, which is sort of the normal strength I would drink things at. By the way, I apologize to the people coming to this from like other bourbon channels. I don't have music. I don't have like another guy to banter with. I don't have like lots of editing and cuts to remove the awkward moments. I don't have any of that. There's no background. It's just my living room and a Christmas tree I haven't taken down yet. Because that's how I roll. We're doing this we're doing this live and we're doing it on no budget. Yeah, you can see the quality, but the quality is in a way secondary to just the showpiece that this is. Okay, moving on to the J. Henry. So this is J. Henry and Sons, Patton Road Reserve, 8-year-old, and it is. I have no idea what barrel this is, but it's 60% alcohol exactly. Barrel number 229. And here's the story with these folks. So J. Henry are up in Wisconsin. They are growing their own grain, except for the barley. They are buying their neighbor's barley, and it's heritage grains. So these are all sort of older varietals of and sorts. It's a 4-grain bourbon as well. So it's older varietals of corn, rye, wheat, also, and barley. I think the breakdown is something like 60 corn, 14-inch rye, each rye and wheat, and 12 barley, and of course then they age it in their own. I think they have it distilled by someone else. They have like a little bit Armagnac style, but then they age it in their own warehouses in their own wood. And this is an example of just sort of what craft bourbon has kind of become as people have been chasing around Blantons and things like that. This is well, okay, let's get into it. On the nose. Okay, this is Patton Road Reserve, 8-year-old. Cask strength. Totally different style. I mean, just completely, has a kind of passing familiarity with this. Totally different from what this is. Because this is, it feels a little bit both old-fashioned and new school. It really feels like it's just a different evolutionary track from something like this. This is a distillate-driven bourbon, which is not something you find all that often, except in the craft, producers. Like there's wood there, but it's really driven by the grains and the spirit. So the wheat and the rye in particular are singing. This smells like, someone's spice cabinet exploded in your face. And it's kind of nice. It's, this is black licorice wrapped in peppermint. And like other kinds of mint too. Like there's some spearmint in there. There's some very prominent cinnamon, some rosemary, a little dill. And the oak is there, but it's kind of it's not calling shots. Not at all like this. It's kind of in the background. This is really sort of there's a little toasted coconut. A little bit of that same autumn leaf note that I was getting in the Heaven Hill. But maybe like a shot of espresso too. Like one vanilla bean, like throw in one vanilla bean. But that's kind of it for the oak. I mean, the rest is just driven by, you know, what they grew and what they put in the still. And that's, I mean, that's well, we'll talk about that in a minute. And it's just lovely. It smells incredibly fresh for being, you know, in new oak for 8 years. A little bit of tangerine and some like orange, maybe more like orange zest than the actual pulp. White pepper, definitely some white pepper. Just kind of like unripe berries, but unripe berries. Like you know, you pulled some off the tree when it was just beginning to turn into spring, and they weren't there yet. They were still a little green, you know. Um, Green tea leaves. Um, yeah, it's a lovely complex balance. This is an ensemble cast. Like this is not, you know, dominated by one star. This is the ensemble cast where the oak is just a contributing player. On the palate, mhm, really follows from the nose. Actually, all of these kind of follow from the nose. Tons of mint, a menthol, some basil, kind of a eucalyptus thing too. But you know, mixed in with like something anise driven, like an absinthe, or really like, do you know Rocky? It's a this terrible um Turkish spirit that's very sort of anise driven. Although it's nice here. Um, mm. But then it's all sort of lightened up by the wood sugars, kind of in the background, the vanillins, a little bit of an overstewed black tea note. It just fattens it out a little bit. Oh, that's nice. White pepper again, almond butter, kind of a dusty attic thing. Um, Orange essence, a little orange essence. Throw a drop or two in there, and dark chocolate, like Lint 90 or something. Um, I mean, it's not as I mean, it's not as complex as it is on the nose. I think the palate is a little loses a little bit to the nose, but it does have this lovely kind of just balance is the key word here. Like mm, no, poise, not balance. Those are not those are kind of the same thing, aren't they? Um, it has this like long, you know, full spicy finish that just covers the mouth. Oh, this is really good. I'm going to give this a squirt of water, but it's really good, and I want you to get this in a totally different way from the Stagg is, right? Um, let's, like half a squirt more. There we go. All right, let us go back through, and I'll give these a score. All right, back to the Helmut Evan Williams again, like 15 odd bucks, right? And still really good. All right, on the nose, actually quiets down quite a lot. Kind of pulls back, but otherwise, kind of the same. I get a little more white pepper now, a little like an amaretto, like an amaretto di amore or something on the nose. Yeah, not a lot. This is kind of quieted down on me a little bit. On the palate, okay, all right. Doesn't develop all that much. Um, Gets a little bit sweeter. Um, kind of the wood sugars start to come out to play a little bit more. Um, there's a little, but more kind of, woody ashy at the same time. There's a little bit of a charcoal briquette thing coming out, but like covered in maple syrup. Simple, but really nice. I mean, it's perfect for what it is. For 15, 20 bucks, you probably will have a hard time doing better than this. I'm not going to go crazy with my scoring. I don't think this is, in the stratosphere. This is for me a 79 plus point bourbon. It's got something. It's clearly trying, it's got some dimension to it, but it just needs to do something about that weird thinness to it, and maybe get a couple more years under the belt. And but I mean, for what it is, I mean, like find something better for 15 bucks. Seriously. All right, moving on to the Stagg. Okay. So I did mention explicitly that you should not do what I did, which is to add water to this thing. And the reason why is it becomes actually much more aggressive. Obviously, the alcohol tones down. It gets less nippy. But, I mean, the oak comes out and it's pissed. It is pissed at me. It is angry at me, and it's swinging at my face. Like sour wood, tree bark, old leaves, like white Tic Tacs. Do you know the little white Tic Tacs that you try to take for breath mints and it never really worked very well? Like pine cones, the cherry, the fruit thing is gone. Like that's all gone. It's just angry oak now. And on the palate, oh, okay. So the nip is mostly gone. We're down at sort of a regular strength. But again, the wood has come out and it's like, trying to rip my face off. It's actually more difficult to drink, proof down than it is sort of at strength. All of these you should be drinking, in small sips if you're going to drink them at strength. But, oh, Jesus. Proofing this down is... Oh, yeah, it's just all on... I mean, it was all on oak before, but now it's like much more bitter, tannic, medicinal oak. Like ash bark, like green, sour characters. That white Tic Tacs thing again. So the thing is, from experience, I will tell you, if I left this to sit for long enough, for maybe 15, 20 more minutes, it would settle down a little bit. But at that point, like all it becomes is, a kind of older version of Buffalo Trace Mash Bill 1. It kind of like really this, if with just shot up with more oak. And it doesn't feel special anymore. I mean, again, the appeal of this is the spectacle part of it. But the more I actually drink of it, the less I want to drink, if that makes sense. Again, it's like the Lamborghini Countach. You want to drive it, but after you've been driving it for a while, you don't want to drive it anymore. Or like, I don't know, some of the dresses, like a Valentino dress, circa the early 90s, right? Like it looks spectacular. It looks amazing. Are you really going to wear it? You might wear it more than once. Are you going to wear it more than twice? Are you going to wear it 4 times? How many times is it really going to get out of your closet? That's kind of how I feel about this. This is, this is a fashion runway piece. That's not nothing, right? I mean, that's you can tell this is substantial. Um, it's well made. It's interesting, but I mean, when you get down to it, what this is a you know a high corn bourbon that's just been really jacked up with the alcohol and the age. Um, it's impossible to score, right? I mean, I know people who are sane who would give this, put this in the 90s, and I can't agree with that. I'm not going to give it a low score. I'm going to give it like an 87 minus, um, which is good. I mean, that's the minus is because you just don't add water to this. Just drink it neat. I know it hurts. I know it's nippy. Just drink it neat. That's the way to have this. Yeah, 87 minus. Ooh. Mm. Oh, the oak does not like me. Uh, and we'll talk more about the Stagg in a second. All right, moving on to the J. Henry. All right, with water now. Again, also the wood comes through, but it's more balanced this time because there's just less wood. Oh, that's nice. It's still retains the sort of herbaceous nature from before, the mint, the rocky thing. But now there's a little bit of sort of a baked Brussels sprout coming through. Um, Baltic style black bread, rye bread, sourdough, mint tea with honey. Um, Kind of more just like old attic stuff, dust, books, maybe some leather. It's a terrific nose, like either way. I mean, um, drink this neat, drink it with water. I mean, this is a great nose. Once again, wood comes out to play a little bit more on the palate, but not excessively so. This really comes off as like a big pile of fennel with, take a take a scoop of ice cream, vanilla ice cream, and then throw it into it. Um, that just steals this and runs away with it. Kind of a nutshelly thing too on the finish. Oh, again, the palate is still a little bit simpler than the nose, but it's quite good. I mean, it's got this. It feels old school in the same way that something like Old Grandad 114 or something feels old school, but it's just so new and wonderful at the same time, and very novel. Let me try this one more shot. It's really the vanilla fennel thing is really running away with this. Hmm. It doesn't evolve that much with water. If it evolved a little bit more, I would feel comfortable scoring it higher. Like it would be an 89 if this opened up a little bit more, given a little water. As it is, I'm gonna call this an 88 point bourbon. Now you might say, well, this is a $130 bottle. That seems excessive. Uh, I mean, that price seems excessive for the kind of quality, the kind of score you're giving it. And that's true, but at the same time, I mean, look at the prices of Stagg these days, right? And that's kind of where I'm getting at. So realistically, this is off the table for most people, right? I mean, this is gone at the moment. All right, let's talk about bourbon, right? I'm going to enjoy this fine heaven hell while I do so. Um, okay, so the first thing to remember is that this still exists and this still exists. Like, don't get distracted by the fact that you can't buy Blanton's or Elmer T. Lee anymore. Like, there's still good bourbon out there. It's just not those. So why is this happening? Why is why is it impossible to get Blantons now? What is going on? Okay, let's or I mean, you can still get them just at exorbitant prices, right? Um, so this is where I'm gonna get a little nerdy. Um, we have to sort of talk about why are there bubbles? Why are there in markets more generally? Uh, so I mean, it's even kind of difficult to define a bubble because you have to say, well, obviously a bubble is the market price of something is inflated beyond what the sort of actual value of it is. But it's that actual value part where it gets tricky, right? I mean, how do you define the actual value of, well or 12-year-old or something like that? That's hard. Um, and there's debates now, like to what extent it's rational to invest in bubbles, right? Um, and I mean, I think it's a little bit of a mess because herd mentality is always right, because that's the market follows herd mentality, and it just turns out that at some point herd mentality will turn out to have been wrong at a particular moment, um, and that's the pain in the ass, right? Among other things. But I mean, there's a more basic reason why bubbles happen, and it's not because certain people get really excited about bourbon prices and just um, decide to throw all their savings into it or whatever. If you take away one thing from this video, aside from maybe the reviews I just did, take that message away. This isn't just normal people putting their money into bourbon and then running across the state and buying up, you know, all the blends they can find. This is something else. What most economists, so far as I can tell, agree on is that there's a correlation. There's a relationship between sort of inflated asset prices and income inequality. In other words, sort of bubbles bubble roughly at the same moment when wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few very, very, very rich folks. And you have to sort of keep, and this is not me sort of moralizing here. I'm not saying that rich are bad people. I'm just kind of just trying to describe what's going on. It's not even a causal relationship. It's more like a kind of feedback loop. But in any case, you have to stop thinking about like normal people investing in their money into spirits. I mean, if I, decided that I was gonna, take $5,000 of mine, if I had say I have savings and I'm gonna invest my $5,000, in a couple cases of things that I like that I think are gonna be worth something in a couple of years. Okay, that's 4 or 5 cases maybe off the market, right? Maybe a couple more. I don't know, 7, 8, depending on what I'm buying. That's going to make a difference if it's something allocated. If it's something a little bit rarer to find, it's going to make a difference, but not that big a difference. The problem doesn't come in normal people deciding to invest $5,000, $10,000 into these things. The problem begins to come when I mean, imagine when you're dealing with someone really rich, impossibly rich. You're dealing with someone who has basically a pipeline that's spewing money at all times, right? And that money has to go somewhere. And anywhere it goes, it's going to have effects. It's going to sort of drive up prices because all of a sudden there's money just going out into this thing where it wasn't before. So these rich people, maybe they're perfectly virtuous otherwise, but they have to figure out something to do with this damn money they have. They have to hand it over to a financial advisor and say, get some kind of decent return on this. I don't know what figure it out. Now, one of those people, start hearing that maybe bourbon is something worth investing in. They don't, invest $5,000 into it. They don't buy, 5, 6, 7 cases. They're writing checks out there for someone to go out and buy them $500,000 worth of good stuff, $1 million, $5 million. That's gonna change the market, right? You get where I'm going with this? Like, it's just a different scale of like pulling stuff off the market and stuffing it in a box somewhere. Like now you're pulling like entire warehouses out of distribution, so that they can go into collectibles. Like, and I think that kind of thing is what's driving up. I mean, there's lots of things happening, right? But I mean, it's the entry of just the impossibly rich into the collectibles market that is driving things up. You know, Blanton's up to $200, $300, and Stagg up to $800, $1,000. I don't even know where it is. It's probably more as you watch this. That's what's doing it. It's someone, writing a big check saying, I don't know, get me some stuff that's going to be worth something, and then all these other people have to run around. The auction sites go crazy because suddenly everyone is, all the, I don't know, Weller 12s are going for stupid prices, and suddenly everyone's running around the state, buying up the stuff, and then what? I mean, so this is. I'm not saying. I say this not to recommend a particular path. I'm not saying don't invest. I'm not saying do invest in, bourbon or whatever. What I'm saying is have some awareness of why this is happening. And why it is happening is pipelines of cash spewing everywhere, and they just happen to be turned on the bourbon market at this very moment. And to be honest, I mean, now that this has happened, now that it's normal to pay $100 or more for a bottle of Weller 12, Weller Antique, I mean, part of the effect of that is I don't think they'll get back down to sort of sane prices within the next generation, certainly. I think it's done. I think you got to find other stuff, and that's okay, right? Because you have people like this out here, right? I mean, so a couple of years ago, I suppose it was normal 6, 8 years ago for bourbon drinkers to look at the small craft distillers and sort of laugh them off and say, why would I spend so much money on this young, rough spirit, which they've tried to, and it is, well, it was and still is sometimes, young, rough spirit. Why would I do that when, I can buy Elijah Craig 12-year-old or Weller 12-year-old for less money, for, under $30 or so. And so they retreated, back into this particular sphere that they knew. And that sphere has now changed a lot because pipelines of money, right? And so now it seems like, no, there's no good bourbon around anymore, or at least none that's sort of you can actually get your hands on. There's just, but there is, of course, right? There's Evan Williams, Wild Turkey 101, and those sort of value options. But even at the higher price points, here's the secret. Like all those craft distilleries y'all dismissed, 6, 8 years ago for good reasons. For good reasons, right? They're still around. And in the meantime, they've grown up. They've started making better stuff. And prices haven't really gotten lower, but they haven't risen at the same rate as, the familiar stuff. And that means if you're looking for good bourbon, maybe start looking into folks like J. Henry, Fuse Spirits, I don't know, Journeyman. I'm going to get to them pretty soon. Start looking into those smaller producers, and throw them your money instead of buying another bottle of Blanton's for $200 or so. Is it going to be the same thing? No, these are more distillate driven than oak driven. They are, again, they have that sort of feeling of being old fashioned in comparison to something like Stagg, but also new because it's distillate driven in a world which is used to oak. God, it's good though. So that's kind of where I feel like this is. Don't think that this is just some episode that's going to be over pretty soon, and soon you'll be able to buy your beloved, Weller Antique 107 for $30 again once all this insanity passes. Don't think this is just because a couple of otherwise known people have decided to invest in bourbon. This is because, money pipelines. income inequality. Think in those big structural terms. And until that stuff changes, don't think, the prices for the stuff that has gotten hit by this, surge of money, don't think that's gonna come back down. But in the meantime, you still got these guys, right? And that's not a bad place for bourbon to be, honestly. When you can get something this good for under $20, you're doing okay as a category. When there's someone out there, making something with integrity and character like this, I mean, things are okay. You just can't get blends anymore. You just can't get, Pappy anymore. Move on. That's all I got. Anyways, I hope some of this was informative. 79 plus, 88 and 87 for the Stagg. 87 minus, I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks for watching and cheers.